Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 52 of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. This will be the last one I record here. I'll be back in my normal setup, mainly with the microphone and everything, so it'll sound better next episode. But of course, still enjoying. Of course, you all know I'm a student at UK, enjoying the break while I can, and I didn't bring the podcast setup with me. We got comments rolling in already, so people are clearly excited for today's episode. And I want to start the same. I want to start the episode the way we always start. I'm talking about the rankings and such. Kentucky is up to number 6 in the AP poll, highest ranking since 2014, highest ranking of the Kenny Brooks era. Now, I don't have to sit here and read off the entire AP poll just to get to Kentucky, right? So we got UConn at 1. I think they'll stay at number 1 until they lose, right? Defending national champions. They've played a few ranked teams and they've beat them by like 30. So until UConn loses, if they lose, I think they'll just be stuck there at number 1. You got Texas at number 2, South Carolina at 3, UCLA at 4, Oklahoma at 5, and then we've got us, Kentucky at 6, Vanderbilt at 7, Vandy, shout out Vandy, number 7, Maryland, who Kentucky lost to back in November, is at number 8. They took a close loss to Illinois recently, Michigan at 9, and then Louisville, who Kentucky beat by double digits on the road in November, is at number 10. So that's the AP top 10. Of course, Kentucky sitting there at number 6. Now, Oklahoma, we'll talk about them later, ranked number 5, one spot ahead of Kentucky, comes to Memorial on Sunday. So that'll be quite the game. You have number 5 versus number 6 there. And, of course, like I said, Kentucky all the way up there at number 6. It's what happens when you beat LSU on the road, right? It's what happens when you get a win like that. Moving on to the net rankings, Kentucky is back up to number 7. They've been at 7 for like the last month, but for like a week or two, they were back down at 8. They're, of course, up at 7 again. You look at the net rankings, you've got UConn at 1, UCLA at number 2. They've gotten some quad 1 wins. I think they have like 5 or 6 quad 1 wins already. Like UCLA, they've been stacking them up. South Carolina at 3, Texas 4. LSU, still number 5 in the net. This is why I think the net is such a flawed. I mean, we've talked about it, right? Like, I think the net is so flawed in the way it's designed, and I kind of hate that it's important. And that brings me to this point of, I saw this other metric. It's called WAB, wins above bubble. And I've never heard of that, right? I heard of that like the other day was the first time I ever heard of that. And I already think it is a much more useful metric than the net. I believe Kentucky was 5th in that. And basically what the WAB is, I mean, the wins above bubble, right? I guess it's when you take, let's take Kentucky's schedule and the games they've played and the wins and losses they have. I guess that ranking, the way I understand it and the way, I mean, that's what it's called. I think it's like if you take the average bubble team, right, NCAA tournament bubble team, and they played your schedule, that's how many wins they would be above the bubble or something like that. But regardless, it sounds more useful to me than the net, which, I mean, clearly LSU at 5 seems a little flawed. Like I said, it's just, again, you beat a team, a few days ago at their place and you're still ranked below them. Michigan 6, Kentucky 7, Michigan State at number 8, TCU 9, Oklahoma 10. So, I don't want to buy into the net rankings too much, but they're important, right? Like, that's what people are looking at when they go to do stuff. So I guess it is what it is. Look at Kentucky's quad records. Of course, when you beat LSU on the road, that's one more quad 1 win for Kentucky. Now 3-1 in quad 1 games. And of course, Kentucky undefeated in quads 3 and 4. Missouri was a quad 3 win. I believe Missouri and even Central Michigan, I think Marshall as well, are all kind of close to moving up or down the quad line. So those are teams for us to keep an eye on as well. Kentucky is now a 2 seed in the ESPN bracketology. It's the highest Kentucky's been, slotted in the projected field under Kenny Brooks. And we've seen it with the men this morning. And of course, I went and looked at the women's bracketology. Look over here. Like, is this not like the ugliest? Like, what are we doing over here? Like, I miss the old design of the ESPN bracketology where it was the simple white screen and your normal like lettering and design with the green and red arrows or whatever. And then there's this horse crap. Like, then there's that. So, as you see, Kentucky is a 2 seed, projected to play 15 seed Fairleigh Dickinson in the first round, and then you have 7 seed Stanford, 10 seed Oregon. I clicked expand on Kentucky just to see what it brought up, and it brought up this little seed projection history thing. Basically, if you can't see it and you're just listening on podcast, Kentucky has steadily risen in the projected seeding. Of course, now sitting at 15-1 and 2-0 in the SEC. So I think it's just something to keep an eye on. A little bit of news before we got on the podcast today. Tony Morgan, deservedly so, named National/Co-SEC Player of the Week. I think it's funny, we talked about it on our message board, KSR Plus, subscribe if you haven't already, where, she's named National Player of the Week, which makes sense, 24 points, 12 assists, no turnovers in the game winner against LSU, and then 18 points, 14 assists against Missouri. All right, that makes sense. She could win National Player of the Week. But then she is only co-SEC Player of the Week. Vandy's Michaela Blake's also won SEC Player of the Week. She averaged, I think it was like 33.5 points a game this week. So, I don't know. Maybe I can understand that a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I would have obviously picked Tony Morgan outright. But again, when you consider the week she had, that was pretty special. We got Matt in the chat saying she is so casual about being an assassin. And you're absolutely right about that. And I remember I was listening to Kenny Brooks' radio show last night. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a second, where he was talking about Tony. And you can see the video. The women's team put out this video on social media, and it's this choose your character thing. And it's all the different reactions after Tony Morgan's game-winning shot. And Kenny Brooks jumps in, what looks like 4 feet in the air, pumping his fist. You got the bench, the managers, the crowd, everybody cheering. And then you look at Tony, and she's just blank face, hits the game winner. And as I don't know if she's trying to put on the face or if it was her natural reaction, but cool as a cucumber. Tony Morgan just stone cold, not even, getting super hype about her own game-winning shot. But talking about the radio show a little bit more, against Missouri, we all saw where Teonni Key, a little bit later in the third quarter, she goes and dives for a loose ball, and, you're sitting there watching, and it's Teonni, and I don't remember which Missouri player, but they're both diving for this loose ball, and Teonni kind of awkwardly lands on top of her. And where I'm sitting, I'm at the scorer's table. I'm not at the scorer's table where they're actually keeping the score. I'm on the one opposite side of the floor where just media and the announcers. The play takes place on the other side of the court from me. And to me, I'm assuming Teonni, because I did go back and watch it, where she goes over there, lands on top of the player, but her arm kind of lands awkwardly on the court and under the player, and immediately you knew something was wrong, right? Teonni's on the floor in serious pain. Tony Morgan, some of the Missouri staff, they look petrified at the look of Teonni. They look petrified and mortified at what they just saw from Teonni Key. Kenny Brooks goes over there. He said on his radio show last night, he was like, I even got queasy a little bit. And, we couldn't see this in the arena, but you go look on the broadcast and half of her arm is flopping around, right? We learned post-game, Kenny was talking to UK Sports Network's Darren Hedrick on the radio, and he said that Teonni had dislocated her right elbow. And so, first of all, I hadn't I mean, I guess it's an injury that I guess makes sense and can like, I guess I get, but I had never heard of a dislocated elbow until that, and I'm just sitting there like that sounds like the most painful thing in the world. And so after the game, like we said, Kenny talks about how it's a dislocated elbow, but they don't really know much outside of that. And so I tried to research stuff a little bit. I tried asking around, and kind of that night, it was a matter of okay, let's see, what testing looks like. Let's see what If, I think they had to figure out was anything else torn or messed up, like any soft tissue, something like that. And it looks like they got like pretty good results, right? You got Kenny talking about how on his radio show he said Teonni Key should come back, right? She could, or excuse me, she should come back. You know, for the rest of the season. Said she could be out a couple of weeks, could be a little longer. He said he spoke to her. It sounds like she had surgery on the arm already, talking about how she was drugged up when he was talking to her. But at the end of the day, I think if you're Kentucky, you have to be pretty, I don't want to say pleased, but you have to, I guess, be just thankful that the news wasn't worse. And again, I would say, assuming rehab and recovery and everything and all that goes well, Teonni Key should be back before the end of the season. And if you go off Kenny's very like loose, not finite timeline of a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit longer, I would say you're looking at a return maybe somewhere between the end of January and Valentine's Day, somewhere around that. So again, I think if you're Kentucky, you're just really happy and again, like I said, counting your lucky stars that thank goodness Teonni didn't somehow get hurt worse from that. It's gonna suck because she's gonna be out for some really important games, like these next two coming up. Um, I'm actually gonna pull it up right now, just the upcoming schedule for Kentucky. Let's just look through the end of the month, right? So we've got Alabama and Oklahoma up next. Then they play Florida at home, Mississippi State on the road, Tennessee on the road. Like those two games in particular are going to really suck without her. And then you've got, um, let's just run all the way to Valentine's Day. You got Georgia at home after that, Arkansas on the road, Vandy at home, Texas on the road. I mean, Texas is February 9th. I would almost look at Texas as like, I don't know any, like, this is not based off sourcing or anything. This is pure speculation. Like, I would assume you see that game at Texas, February 9th, and you kind of go off that little timeline thing I just gave. I think you would, like, really, really, really hope you can have her back for that Texas game, right? I don't know if that's something anyone's even talked about yet, but, that's a game you'd really want to win, obviously, ranked number 2 in the country, so I could see that being a potential return maybe, if that timeline is somewhat correct. And then you've got February 12th against A&M, and then the day after Valentine's Day is Ole Miss at home. So again, I would just look at those games and see, what we'll see what happens, right? But I think for now, we just need to be glad that Teonni isn't somehow more hurt. We got Captain Kirk in the chat asking, is Elsa going to play now for depth purposes, or are they going to continue with the plan to redshirt her? We never did get an official announcement if Elsa Vadfors was going to redshirt or not, but I would not expect her to play even with the Teonni Key injury. Teonni was out, for 2 games against Wright State and Hofstra. She didn't appear in those games. She dressed for like a couple of games in November, didn't play, but dressed, and we are like, is she going to play? But I don't expect Elsa Vadfors to play. With Teonni Key out, I would honestly just tell you that you're just gonna. I would say you're gonna see that starting lineup of Tony Morgan, Asia Boone, Jordan Obi, Amelia Hassett, Claire Strack, and players like Kaylin Carroll, Lexi Blue, and even a Josie Gilvin are going to get more PT, but especially someone like a Kaylin Carroll. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Maybe my favorite game of the Kenny Brooks era, and probably almost certainly my favorite game covering these Kentucky Wildcats since I've been on the beat. Kentucky goes on the road and beats number 5 LSU 80-78. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I'm watching that game and Kentucky goes down 14-2, I wanted to turn the TV off. I wanted to cry. I wanted to go to bed. It was just horrible watching the beginning of that game. And this is just like between all of us, right? No one else has to know this, but between all of us on our message board, I even said the game was over. I was like, I just don't see how Kentucky can come back against a team this great offensively. Remember, they were averaging 108 points per game going into that game. LSU was. And I was like, if you're already down 14-2, you're getting rocked early on the road. I was like, this one's over, right? And then Kentucky goes on that 13-0 run to get them back in the game. And then all of a sudden, you're only down by 1 point at the end of the first quarter. And that was only because Jada Richard hit like a floater, like mid-ranger at the buzzer, right? You're only down 23-22 at the end of the first. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, we're right back in the mix. Then it just becomes stick to your game plan and, weather the storm and see what it looks like at the end of the fourth quarter. But, obviously you had some heroic performances in that game. Maybe gets overlooked a little bit, at least when we when we're all looking back on this game a couple of years from now, it might get overlooked that Kentucky maybe even won this game on the glass. 45 rebounds to LSU's 29, 17 offensive rebounds to LSU's 4. But you look at the rest of the stat sheet, and it's not like Kentucky really dominated elsewhere. Now, that's obviously a big stat to dominate in 45-29. But you look at the rest of the stats, it's not like Kentucky really killed LSU. Of course, the MVP of that game was Tony Morgan. There's no ifs, and buts, whatevers. Tony Morgan, MVP, 24 points, 7 of 10 shooting, 3 of 3 from beyond the arc, 12 assists, no turnovers, as we've already discussed, and of course the game-winning 3. When Clara Strike fouled Michaela Williams, which, by the way, I don't even think that was really a foul. I talked about it on the Rapid Reaction. I mean, if she touched Michaela Williams, it was like this. It was like a fingertip touch, maybe. Captain Kirk saying that the LSU game was the best women's game they have seen since Iowa LSU in the national championship with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Yeah, that was that was a great game. That was genuinely. I had national people writing me. Had a lot of South Carolina people writing me. Listen, guys, Kentucky won that game. All right, that wasn't just a win for Kentucky. All right, that was a win for America, and that was a win for South Carolina. Okay, I had a lot of people in Gamecock Nation writing me, some beat writers in Gamecock Nation saying, hey, great win for Kentucky. We really appreciate that one. But again, like whenever Clara Strack fouls Michaela Williams on that 3, I'm sitting there watching, and like I said, I don't even think it's a foul, like I've already noted. But Michaela hits all 3 of those free throws. And, of course, now it's very funny to look back on. I saw it's like a cinematic video with, I forget what song is played over it, but it's like this sad music. And after Michaela hits the 3 free throws, they're up 77, and she's hyping up the crowd, and then the screen fades to black. This is the cinematic video I'm talking about. Screen fades to black. Tony Morgan hits 3, LSU loses, right? So I thought that was great. But at that point when Kentucky was down, down by a point, I thought the game was over. I thought the refs, I thought Clara Strack, I thought all of it was had cheated us out of a win. But nonetheless, Kentucky hangs on, gets the huge win. And speaking of Clara Strack, we don't really talk about her performance from that night, but 15 points, 9 rebounds, that's a really good game for 99% of women's college basketball players. But we've got an Eau Claire Strack putting up these monster stat lines, and of course the 4 fouls she had, and that one really big pivotal foul, you know, kind of look at as an off performance. But even then, the possession before she commits the foul, she does her signature turnaround fade and one, right, gets Kentucky a lead in position to eventually have Tony Morgan make that game winning three. And, you know, I don't know how long Teonni Key is going to be out, right? I really don't think, and I don't hope it'll be for the whole season, right? But I think regardless of how long Teonni Key's out, we'll all be able to look back on her Kentucky career and say, man, remember that LSU game? 17 points, 16 rebounds against LSU. I mean, had missed the previous 2 games with injury, and then she comes out and puts out her own Angel Reese, Anissa Murrow type stat line, right? 17 points, 16 rebounds. I mean, that is special stuff from Teonni Key, and of course, it was just a special night in general. Kentucky gets its biggest win of the season and its biggest road win ever, right? Like, that's something we're also probably going to gloss over, but that was Kentucky's highest ranked road win in program history. Previous was at number 7, Louisville. I want to take a quick second to thank Rollback, sponsor of today's episode. Change the game with Rollback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear, from polos and quarter zips to shorts and Delta performance pants. You will look good and feel good with Rollback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at rollback.com. Now, life in the SEC moves very fast, and as fun as the LSU win was, as exciting as that was, we had to move on. We had to quickly turn the page to the Missouri game, right? A Missouri team who, in the game prior, had a lead over number 2 Texas after the first quarter and was only down by 3 at the half. We got this fan real quick. One more LSU note. Says it looked like LSU was lost and didn't really have a game plan. The rebounding margin wouldn't have happened, against someone. I'm trying to figure out how to read this. The rebounding margin wouldn't happen had it been against someone like a Brittany Griner and Angel Reese, those types of Kim Mulkey teams. Yeah, that's something LSU's missing, is that clear, dominant big. Kate Caldwell is very good. I think she's going to end up being really good down there at LSU. But at the end of the day, they are clearly missing that. And the thing about LSU, which I've thought about this a little bit. I'll go back to LSU real quick. The thing about LSU, and this kind of reminds me of how Kentucky might even be next year, is they're so young. Like, they have so many elite young kids, like freshmen, sophomores, that, didn't get this kind of, they didn't really get tested in non-conference, right? We talked about LSU's non-conference schedule, and you look at it, and you say to yourself, well, they haven't been tested, they haven't really played anybody, they're going to get punched in the mouth by Kentucky and lose, potentially, and that's what ended up happening against Vanderbilt, too. I think LSU, they're clearly a very good team still. Kentucky beat LSU, and a lot of people are counting them out. LSU's still a top 10-ish team in the country, right? They just happened to run into 2 other top 10 teams in the country and happened to lose both of those games, but they were both decided by a total of 6 points, okay? So LSU is still very good, but when you don't play anybody in the non-conference and you don't play anybody with really young kids like freshmen and sophomores on your team, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a game like a loss against Kentucky or a loss at Vandy, right? So I think clearly LSU, like I said, is a good team. They got to figure it out, right? And they should have had it figured out by now, but they don't. So I think they play Oklahoma, and I think their next 3 SEC games are in some order: Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma. They're going to start SEC play 1-4, probably. And LSU shouldn't. But they did that to themselves and have no one else to blame. So back to Missouri, like I was originally starting with. 74-52 win for the Cats. Look at the stat sheet, and Kentucky did not dominate on the boards. 41 rebounds to Missouri's 40, right? Only one rebound difference there. I think something that was very interesting heading into this game was, okay, we saw how LSU not dominated, but LSU kind of won the stats for the most part. How would Kentucky bounce back? Kentucky shot 34% from 3, 11 of 32. But Missouri, who came into this game as the number 3-point shooting team in the country, averaging like 38.6% from 3, I believe, only shot 18% from beyond the arc, 5 of 28. Missouri was off their game, and I attribute that to Kentucky's elite defense. But go look at the box score again. I think Teonni Morgan has to be your MVP. 18 points, 14 assists, shot 7 of 11 from the field, 2 of 3 from beyond the arc. That's how you win National Player of the Week, right? You hit a game winner against LSU, and instead of coming out, sloppy or coming out, just not on your A game against Missouri, you come out in 18-14. Okay? That's how you win National Player of the Week, co-SEC Player of the Week. Clara Strack had 19 points, made 3 threes as well. 10 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2 steals for her. Obviously, so again, the potential run for back-to-back SEC Defensive Player of the Year still looking very much alive right there. Jordan Obi, whose performance to me kind of flew under the radar, 10 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 3 rebounds. And then you look at somebody like an Asia Boone, who had 9 points on 3 made threes, 4 rebounds for her. And then Amelia Hassett, who hasn't, played great in these last few games, but had a pretty, I would say, a solid-ish performance against Missouri. 8 points, which is nothing, it's nothing out of this world, but 8 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. So, again, kind of, if she isn't going to score 20 points and hit 5 threes, well, she's going to kind of do everything else across the stat sheet, which is the Amelia Hassett that we have known to come and love. Captain Kirk again asking, does Kentucky have the best point guard center combo in the country? It's close. I would say it's close. Raven Johnson, Medina Okot at South Carolina is a really good one. Kiki Rice, Lauren Betts, that's a really good one. Got TCU, Olivia Miles, and Marta Suarez slash Clara Silva, so that's definitely one as well. I would say so. I can't think. UCLA is a really strong contender there. I can't think of another program. I would say Clara Strack is one of the top I would say top 4 for sure centers in the nation. And then you have Teonni Morgan, who to me, I personally really, really like Rory Harmon. I know she doesn't score a ton. I know when you look at just comparing stats, Teonni Morgan is better across the board. And I think Teonni Morgan probably is the better point guard. But I'm a really big fan of Rory Harmon. I love the way she plays. But, I would say between Teonni Morgan and probably Olivia Miles, I would almost say it's a toss-up for who's the best point guard in the country right now. But at the end of the day, like Matt says, Morgan is probably going to be the one to end up with the best point guard stats in the country. So maybe it is Teonni Morgan that is the best point guard in the country. But yeah, I'm just really excited to see what this team kind of does, especially with those two leading the pack. But you get this Missouri win, and now you're looking at Alabama, who, let me just say, the SEC, there's not going to be an easy game. There's no such thing as an easy game in the SEC, okay? Even Arkansas, they're a winning team. They have a winning record, right? I don't think when you go look at the SEC standings, if I can pull it up just real fast, I don't think there's anyone in the SEC who's just flat out horrible. Texas A&M, I mean they're 7-4, but again, you're looking at that, and there's nobody on the schedule who is just completely garbage. Alabama, you look at them; they are 15-1 on the year. Their only loss is to South Carolina. In their last game, they beat Arkansas 77-48 at home. And then, if you remember a year ago, Kentucky went on the road and beat Alabama 65-56 in what was probably a bit of a closer game than you wanted it to be. Now, the big difference between this Alabama team and last year's is that they don't have Sarah Ashley Barker. And she was truly one of the most underrated players in the country. And if you all remember when they played Maryland in the NCAA tournament, Alabama lost that game, but she had like 45 points. And it was truly, I think, probably the best individual performance of the whole tournament last year, if I remember right. So it's a good thing they don't have her. When you do look at their key players and who they do have for this year, right? You look at a guard like Jessica Timmons, 14.9 points, 4.3 rebounds, and shooting 40.3% from beyond the arc. You look at these four players I have on the screen, and again, if you're just listening on podcast, there's a very like big recurring theme here, right? They got some kids who can score the ball, who can attack the glass, and are really good at putting the ball in the hoop from beyond the arc, right? That's no difference there between her and Essence Cody, 14.6 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, shooting an even 40% from beyond the arc. And then you have a guard, Carly Weathers, 9.3 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 38.8% from beyond the arc. And then lastly, guard Diana Collins, 12.1 points, 2.9 rebounds, and 43.8% from deep. So, again, Alabama, they can attack the glass, they can rebound the basketball. It's a good team. 15-1 doesn't happen, by a fluke. You look at their non-conference schedule, they play Clemson, right, blew them out, beat Minnesota in what was kind of a close game. And of course, the SEC play. They did take a really tough loss to South Carolina. It was a road game. They lost 83-57. So it kind of gives you an idea of how good Alabama really is. But then they bounced back by blowing out Arkansas. So I believe this is the second year in a row they've actually started off 15-1. Yeah, it is. This is the second year in a row that the Crimson Tide is 15-1. So, Christy Curry, I think she may be the longest tenured coach in the conference. But she's always done a really good job down there. And in these last several years, she's kind of gotten Alabama on a new level, right? And again, I think the one thing they're missing this year is a Sarah Ashley Barker, like a true perennial star. And with that being said, I have Kentucky winning this one 81-70. Home game, of course, for the Cats, and I have Clara Strack as my MVP because, again, I look at Alabama's roster and, like with a lot of teams, I don't see a dominant big that I'm like, okay, Clara Strack's going to really, really struggle. Essence Cody's 6'4", but outside of her, you're not looking at anyone. Naomi Jones, 6'4". But yeah, outside of those two, Clara Strack, I feel pretty good about her in general, right? So I got the Cats 81-70. And then look at Oklahoma. When this game is going to be played, it'll be number 6 Kentucky versus number 5 Oklahoma. And the Sooners are really, really, really good. They have, and we're going to go into it later, but they have 2 of the best players in the country on their roster. Oklahoma's a team who, especially this offseason, but really just in general since the NIL era kind of began, they're a team that has spent some money, and it has been well worth it, right? Look at their roster. They are averaging 94.5 points per game. And, of course, as you see on this graphic, averaging 53.1 rebounds per game, first in the country. like I said, ranked number 5 in the AP poll. In their last game, they beat the brakes off of Mississippi State, winning that one 95-47. And now some of their key players. Freshman guard Aaliyah Chavez. Now, let me talk about Aaliyah Chavez, okay? She makes a lot of money, right? And it's well worth it again. Number 1 recruit in the country, according to Rivals. I think number 3, according to ESPN. I'm a huge fan of Leah Chavez, right? She, I think, probably would have ended up at LSU, but because she asked for so much in NIL, LSU was like, all right, we're going to split and go get Zakiya Johnson and Grace Knox instead of just Aaliyah Chavez. But you look at her for Oklahoma, 18.9 points per game, 4.4 assists per game, 4.2 rebounds per game. She shoots at 34.1% from deep. She's one of their better three-point shooters, but I mean, I wouldn't say she's like a dead eye or anything, but she's got the confidence she can pull it up from 30 feet and nail it if she really wants to. Maybe my least favorite player in the history of college basketball, Reagan Beers. I mean, if Bill Laimbeer was still playing, that would be her. 17.4 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, and 2.3 assists per game. Now, what's interesting about Reagan is that when you look at her stats, you're pretty familiar with the fact that, well, she can shoot the three pretty well, right? She can step out and make the three. I don't know what happened this season, but last year she was shooting 36.4% from deep. This year, she's only shooting 15% from beyond the arc. 15, 1-5. I don't know what happened, right? I don't know if last year was some kind of like, some sort of just random spike, some kind of fluke, but all of a sudden she can't shoot the basketball anymore. So Reagan Beers, of course, someone who you're going to have to step out on the perimeter and maybe guard a little bit, but I think now you're kind of just like, okay, she's not going to kill us from beyond the arc, but of course you can step outside the paint and hit a shot if need be. Forward Sahara Williams, 13.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, and 4.1 assists per game. And lastly, guard Zaya Ban, 11.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 12.8 steals per game. We've also got a guard in Peyton Verhulst, who gave Kentucky a lot of trouble last year. I like her a lot too. I think she plays, really solid brand of basketball, averaging, let's see here, I'm trying to find it, 10.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, shooting 30% from deep. So, again, as a team, they're only 31.7%. We're thankfully getting a break between like the number 3 and 4 3-point shooting teams in the country, and Alabama shooting 37% as a team. You finally get a break with Oklahoma. They're right there, like 32%. We got another question in the chat asking, how do you feel about the Reagan Beers and Clara Strack matchup with Teonni Key out? It's going to be very important to monitor, obviously. But when you kind of go look at last year's games, obviously you're gonna wish you had Teonni Key to kind of help out, but you do have Amelia Hassett would be there at the 4 now, so like she can still defend really well to kind of help on Reagan. But kind of looking at the games last year, it was really just they're both gonna do their own thing. Like Reagan's gonna go out there and get 25 and 15, but so's Clara Strack, and so it's just a matter of almost just look at those two, almost even canceling each other out. And it's, okay, what can the guards do? I think that'll be the kind of difference in the game. We got John Boy in the chat saying the girls are kicking butt. Of course they are kicking a lot of butt right now. But yeah, you look at Reagan Beers and Clara Strack. First of all, thank God, like Reagan Beers is a senior now. Like I said, I'm tired of watching her play. I'm tired of when, she can sit there, and for any WWE fans in the chat, you'll understand this. If not, you'll just think I'm insane. When she gives Clara Strack a clothesline from hell or a choke slam or puts her in a sleeper hold, and it's a foul on Clara Strack, well, that's really annoying, right? So I think when you're looking at the keys to the game for this one, I think you're kind of just hoping, okay, if Reagan Beers goes off, hopefully Clara Strack does too. Hopefully Clara stays out of foul trouble, especially with Teonni Key out, right? You're going to need Amelia to, you don't need Amelia to have an insane game, but have a game like you did against Missouri. Don't go 0 of 7 from the field, right? And then I think it's really going to be a battle of whose guards are better, right? You taking the mighty 5-star freshman and Elias Chavez, or you taking the senior, national player of the week, Tony Morgan, right? Who's better at the 2 and the 3, right? Those kinds of things. I think that's going to be super interesting to see. I think this game is going to be extremely close, right? And even with Teonni Key out, my prediction, has stayed the same. If you all recall, I've always thought this was going to be the first loss of SEC play, and with Teonni Key out, I don't have any reason to change that. Oklahoma playing at a great level right now. I think Kentucky can win this game, but I just don't see them winning them all, right? So I've got Oklahoma winning this one 89-84, Tony Morgan, my MVP. So with that, I'm going to call it an episode. Of course, hopefully I'm wrong, right? Unfortunately, I guess in this case, I do have the maybe not so humble brag that I've predicted every single game right this year, including LSU, right? I predicted Kentucky to win them all except for Maryland thus far. So hopefully I'm right about Alabama. Hopefully I'm wrong about Oklahoma. I just think they're playing at such a good level right now. They have such elite players. And with Teonni Key out, I think it'll be a tough task, but hey, going and beating LSU on the road was a tough task. Beating Louisville by double digits was a tough task. Blowing out Miami like you did was a tough task. So, can never count this Kentucky team out. I think that's something that we've all come to find. Steven saying Phoenix got to be wrong sometime, right? Yeah, exactly, right? Maybe this is all part of the plan. I say we lose to Oklahoma, and then we go beat them, right? So, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of the Memorial Memo. I really appreciate you all being here, engaging with us. Like, comment, subscribe, and do all those wonderful things. It means a lot to us. Again, not just me, not just Steven, but all of us here at Kentucky Sports Radio. So again, episode 52 of the Memorial Memo. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much. Go Cats. I will see you all next time. Peace.